I love that introduction. That is so much fun. Hey, welcome everyone to today's session of Vantage Point, the future of work, embracing AI in HR practices and employee engagement, sponsored by our good friends at Vantage Circle. And with me today, as always, is my dear friend and writing partner, Adrian Gostick.
Well, thanks, Jess. Yeah, we are so excited for today. We're going to learn how HR at all levels can really create workplaces that utilize AI to the best effect. Don't be afraid of AI, but use AI and then benefit from this. We have three amazing guests we'll introduce quickly. First off, Dave Ulrich is professor at the Ross School of Business, University of Michigan, and a partner at the RBL Group, a consulting firm focused on helping organizations and leaders deliver value. Dave has published more than 200 articles and book chapters and 30 books, including Reinventing the Organization, The Why of Work, one of my favorites, and the HR Scorecard. Dave recently was ranked the #1 management guru by Business Week and has shaped the HR profession. He's even been called the father of modern HR. We also have Shahana Mukherjee, who is the HR head for global wealth management technology at Citi, as you know them, Citigroup. Shahana is a visionary global HR leader who's made a significant impact and demonstrated exceptional thought leadership in the industry. She holds a master's in HR management from Rutgers and a SHRM SCP certification. She holds a place on Forbes HR Council and is the founder of Unveiled, dedicated to bridging the gap of sponsorship for underrepresented groups. And also we have, joining us from India, Partha Niyag, who's the founder and CEO of Vantage Circle, a leader in the employee recognition space, engagement, and wellness spaces as well. He has an MBA from the Indian School of Business and brings a background in engineering and technology and is disrupting the way HR manages employee engagement and benefit programs. So as you can see, we have a distinguished panel, and we're going to dive right into this idea of AI. Shahana, we'll start with you. So what are you seeing right now in the industry? How is AI starting to impact the HR workplace, the HR practices, and most maybe importantly, reshaping the employee experience?
I think one of the fundamentals, I think, is AI has been around for a long time. What's actually disrupting the dialogue right now is generative AI, because the pace at which things are happening and what we can do, the capabilities that we can tap into, that has significantly shifted in terms of what generative AI can do. And I think that's where we are at this point, where we are trying to understand what that means in terms of people. I think in a way, it's almost forcing us to reevaluate what it means to be humans. It's like forcing more intentionality in that. Because if you think of, say, even employee engagement, right? Like, what can we do in that space? It's also because of all the pace of change that is happening. It's how do you really filter out the noise in a lot of ways to figure out what we can do with it? Because at the end of the day, it's important that it ties to your purpose. So I think in terms of how it's disrupting, it's a lot of what can be and how it can change what our expectations from life is, because technology has a way of getting integrated into our lives very quickly. So I think that's where we are in terms of the practical application of it.
Okay, good overview to start us. Dave, you've been writing on this recently. What are your thoughts on HR and AI?
I still realize I have so much more to learn. It's an area that I think we're exploring. It's the rage. It's kind of in the 80s, it was quality, and then it was strategy or strategery. And so AI gets a lot of attention. I think it's useful to understand at a simple level what it is. And Shahana, I think your definition of generative AI is really powerful. Information is not new. We've always said an organization is built around managing information. What AI does is it allows us to look backwards. So if you go on ChatGPT or BART or whatever tool on generative AI, you say, tell me about X. And instead of a Google search, it's amazing. It can look at the CODIS of data and give you a summary. I have kids who are professors, and they said, this is going to ruin. No student is ever going to write a paper again. And so I tested it. I'll give an example, and then I'll be quiet, but a quick example. So when it came out, I said, what's the future of HR in 100 words. And in less than 15 seconds, it posted something. And I read it and I thought, this is amazing. And then I read it again and I thought, that's what Chester and Elton have been writing about for 10 years. They went back into the historical data and pulled together in a brilliant way, billions of dollars of investment, a 200-word essay. But it wasn't the future. It was the past. And so if you think about AI, it's a way to synthesize what's out there. It's not a way to create what's next. And so when I read that, I thought, look at Chester and Adrian. What they're going to talk about next is not yet in the data set. And so when it gets in the data set, then it becomes part of the past. So my sense is AI allows us to avoid the trudgery of literature review, the trudgery of looking at the past. I can get that quickly, but it doesn't allow us to have the genius of creating the future. And that's where that human element becomes so critical. Now I could say more, but I think that's just to see where AI is. It's artificial intelligence based on the past. It's not informed intelligence based on the future.
And I just want to jump in here. Dave, you wrote a great article that you posted on LinkedIn, I believe just yesterday, about the importance of sitting down and having those face-to-face conversations, because the face-to-face is about the future. And what are you thinking now? And what are you projecting to? So I really like where you're going here. Give me the history and the literary review. If I want to know the future and what people are thinking of, I still have to talk to people. Did I get that right?
Yeah. Let me give an example. Partha and I attended a conference in Delhi a few weeks ago. I did something I haven't done. And Chester, and I'm sure you've done it. They said, we want to do speed teaching. And I said, I haven't done speed dating. I don't know what this is going to be like. So they sat me at a table and sat 4 people down for 7 minutes each. And they asked questions. They wanted answers. I wasn't as interested in the answers. That's reporting data. I was fascinated with their questions. What are the questions you have that we don't yet have an answer to? Well, that's a focus group. And it was a remarkable 90 minutes. I was exhausted at the end of that 10 or 12 groups. And Partha, you may have been part of that. It was just so delightful. But there, Chester, you learn the questions that we don't yet have an answer to. I think LinkedIn does that for me. And that's what I posted. I like LinkedIn, and there's good and bad in LinkedIn. You see the trolls and you see all that. But what are the questions people are addressing that we don't have answers? AI can't yet answer those because that's the genius. So what's going to happen next at Citigroup? I don't know, but let's figure it out. So Chester, that's an example of the questions are more important, at least to me, than the answers. And I think we get that.
I love that idea. Yeah, future versus past, and what are we focusing on? Partha, challenges here. What are you seeing with generative AI and AI in HR with all the clients you're working with?
So I'll differ a little bit from Dave there. So that is the current state today. It's giving you on the historical data. It is giving you all the information, but its ability to learn. Okay. So whatever we are also thinking in the future is based on our past experiences, okay, based on what we are picking up. So I think it will start detecting that what I am going to think next, what Chester is going to do next. I think it was Bill Gates who said, right, that we overestimate the impact in the short term and underestimate the impact in the long term. Short term, I don't see anything else happening except for taking away the drudgery from us, okay, the AI doing that. The long term, I think they'll be able to learn. Okay, all those movies, Armageddon movies, which are there. I think it will come to that state. I mean, I'm not in a bad way. I'm saying they learn there, and they'll be able to predict things in the future. But yeah, future is future. We'll have to just wait and see.
Partha, can I comment on that? And I don't mean to pat the host, but one of the things I love about the strength and weakness of AI, if I say fill in the blank, A, B, C, D, E, well, that's how we often predict the future because we look at a linear path. The reality is it may be A, B, C, D, X, A, B, C, D, X, Q. And that's where I think that human touch becomes so critical because it's not necessarily E. And Partha's Vantage Circle deals with some of those issues. I think that's going to be really fun to begin to figure that out.
Absolutely, I agree. I agree to that. The human touch is always going to be required, and I think the creative work will be there always. Okay, so but yeah, overall, I think my point also is that, it will start learning, okay, how to think about that. E is an option, X is an option. Okay, they will get to know, they will start synthesizing all this data from different people and come to that. But yeah, I agree. Human touch has to be there.
I think like that's what's also emerging, right? Sorry to jump in like before your
Perfect.
questions, but to that point, because it is forcing us to be more human and define what, like, be more intentional about the human aspect of things. Because actually, I don't know if you saw, Gallup just recently published their latest research around employee engagement, and it is at a record low because people are feeling disconnected from a sense of purpose in their organizations. So it is, that shows that, while there's a lot of excitement around the technological advancements, it is important for us to kind of go back to the fundamentals. And there are two things that I feel are quite important. One is defining purpose. Why does it matter? Why are we chasing? It's not about like the latest shiny new object, right? It is, why does this make sense for us? So that is important to put that context. And then in terms of our own identity, how are we defining our identity in relation to others? That is the thing that we are so focused on saying, like, our own perspective, but then how is it helping others? How is it, what's the interaction model? How are we defining it in context, which I think is going to help from an employee engagement perspective, as well as really tapping into the true potential of AI and what it can do for us as humans in enhancing our own capabilities.
Yeah, well said. That human element is going to be there for hopefully a lot longer, right? So, Dave, I want you to kick off this next segment, because AI plays a really large role in automating a lot of the stuff that HR does, right? A lot of that transactional stuff. So, how can HR professionals begin to pivot their careers so that they can focus more on that strategic, like you say, that thinking, that forward thinking, and employee well-being?
Well, I think that's where companies like Vantage Circle and others come good. I mean, don't reinvent software. We used to see people going to create their own software. Don't do that. Go find it. It's out there. And when the technology can provide you, again, for me, AI and technology is about information. When it can provide you information in a more efficient way, use it. But don't depend on it. Analytics, I think they call it structured versus unstructured information. Structured information is in the spreadsheets, it's in the analytics, it's in the data. Unstructured information is the observation. When I did those focus groups in Delhi, that was so helpful because I was listening to the questions. It was not structured. And that's where I think that getting out and observing and feeling and seeing. HR people. I'll give one quick example. A few years ago, and this is, Shahana, I thought you were brilliant. This isn't new. Information has always been around in technology. We did a plant tour, and I was on a team, and we were visiting a plant. And here's an amazing thing. Every time you do a plant tour with a group of outside executives, it's incredible. It's spotless. It's clean. The flip charts are beautiful. Everybody's dressed well. And at the end of the tour, we went in a room, and the plant manager and the head of the company were just puffing their chest. Look at how good it was. The man I was with said, "You got a problem." Whoa, what are you talking about? And he said, in the last hour and a half, not once did a member of the plant management team or the CEO of the company go offline and talk to an employee. How's your spouse? How's your kid at soccer? How's your mother? How's your health? Not once did I see the interpersonal, and I love, Shahana, your comment, I wrote it down, around belonging and connecting. Not once did a plant manager or a member of your team just go shake hands and say, "Whoa, it was fun to see you last Sunday at church." Not once. That's a problem. That wasn't in the statistics. And that's the stuff, Chester, that I hope the human element never loses sight of, that personal sensitivity. I confess, I missed it. I was ready to say, "Oh, A+, they passed with driving colors." As soon as they said it, I thought, you were right. That's the unstructured piece that I think becomes so critical as we think about the future, not the past.
Yeah, and the point there is when you see it, it's so interesting you mentioned that, because I did a tour of a plant McKee Foods, right? And they make all the wonderful honey buns and all that good stuff. And when I went around with the plant manager, people felt comfortable approaching him. Like
Nice.
they came offline. And that's when I think you really got a good relationship. It's, hey, Sean, good to see you again, right? They didn't feel like they had to be approached. Well, Shahana, what do you think about that?
Absolutely. I think that with any technological advancement, I think, again, history is a good teacher that way, because every time there is, oh, people are going away, like every time something kind of really disruptive happens, that's the general kind of, narrative that this is going to just eliminate people. But I think that history has taught us that humans are very resilient as a species, and we find a way to stick around. And it really kind of evolves to the next level. So if speaking of manufacturing, facilities, initially everything was by manual, right? Like people used to put stuff together. But then machines came around and that got automated. Did people go away? Not really. Like it just became that now they need to learn how to operate those machines. So it's really going through that process of that mindset change, that what is actually going away and then what do we need. And as again, back to the human aspect, that we continue to grow ourselves. We continue to advance our own skill sets and taking on the more complex tasks that create that competitive advantage for organizations.
Well, can I just interject too, Shahana? Is you work in global wealth management. AI could run my investment portfolio, but as Dave says, it would then be focusing on the past versus the future. I'm sure you have discussions around this too. I'm just curious at Citi, how is AI? Is it going to impact how you manage money for people?
So I think in terms of any industry right now, everyone is exploring what that means. So it will time will tell in terms of what that means really, because again, there are so many implications, right? Because we are still learning what the system can do, especially with ChatGPT. There are cases of hallucination, for instance, right? Because it does not focus on accuracy, it is completing the tasks. You have asked a question, it needs to answer, even if it needs to make up facts.
Can I throw, Shahana, I love that. Let me add, I talked about AI looking at the past. The other problem with AI, just so we're clear about the problems, it looks at the codus of data and it doesn't differentiate good and bad data. Go on LinkedIn. I did a study and here's the finding. Well, who did you interview? My 20 friends on LinkedIn and 10 of them responded. Somebody else did a study with 30,000 people. That's what we do. They're equal. No, they're not equal. They're not equal. And AI doesn't, and it will, Partha, I can hear your voice in my head. It will over time parse out good and bad research. But right now, Shahana, as you say, it's just looking at the past. And that study of 10 friends versus thousands of people really is something that AI doesn't yet have the capacity to adjudicate very well.
And absolutely, Dave, you're spot on with that, because I think we have to understand what are the new trade-offs going to be, right? So even if you look at, say, internet, when internet happened, right? Work used to happen pre-internet era too, when we did not have email, right? So, but at that time, the trade-off used to be either you can share more a high volume of information with a very small group of people, or you could try to reach a larger group of people, but then you would be heavily limited in the amount of information that you can transmit. So that was the trade-off that internet then kind of almost level set that whole equation, right? That you can then you have reach as well as you can share large volumes of data and information. So but then that doesn't necessarily mean that it gives you an advantage, because everyone is doing that. So then that means that profit margins, you have to compete that much more for your profit margins and stay ahead, stay innovative. Like we have seen how the watch industry got disrupted by smartphones. which, again, so it's almost like leveling out the playing field more and more, and you have to figure out where those disruptions are coming from and understand what are the new trade-offs that are going to come into the equation.
Yeah, you mentioned, Shahana, advanced, advance your skills. We've got to advance our skills. Back to our factory, there was one line that was basically the same in the 1960s as it is today. A woman was manually putting together boxes. Well, when you get to the more modern line, the machine was doing that. And my question is, well, won't that woman that's putting together the boxes feel like her job is in jeopardy? And the plant manager looked at me and says, "Oh, she hates that job." She would much rather be running the smart computers, and we're training her to do that. So upping the skill levels. But I'm really interesting, Partha. So what would you add to the conversation? This is really fascinating.
No, I think Dave mentioned at the very beginning, we need to ask the right questions, right? So I think that is a skill, by the way. It's a very, very big skill, asking the right kind of questions. And with what they say, the prompts, the ChatGPT prompts which are there. So I think that is something the the HR needs to be AI literate. They need to know what kind of questions to be asked. And to just add on to what Sahana had mentioned, they will move on to more strategic HR. I believe from what my interaction and slight anecdotal evidence is that almost 80% of our time goes on very repetitive, mundane stuff. We'd love someone else to take care. So HR, I think, will move to more strategic, what we have been always talking about, getting a seat in the board, that I think that is going to become more important now for HR. HR will be able to play a more strategic role. And second, I think because with all the technology, the human touch being missing, I think HR also needs to focus more on the well-being. With these things coming in, anxiety, future, unknown future, what's going to happen? Of course, every HR is talking about well-being, but I think we need to now be talking and doing actually some steps in the right direction for the wellness part.
I think like that's a great point. If I can just jump in here, because I think HR as a function is at an inflection point right now, because it's almost kind of revisiting what else can we do in terms of the strategic value, but then also think of what HR is, right? Like we are literally the only function in an organization that touches every point of the talent life cycle, whether it's someone who is looking at our company page to look at jobs, or someone who is leaving the company and becoming an alumni. Throughout the entire life cycle, HR is the connecting point across the organization. So that, obviously, drawing inspiration from Spider-Man, with great responsibility, with great power comes great responsibility, right? So that's where we really are the connecting point across the entire talent organization, which means that with this advances of how can we kind of take care of, like, we don't have to worry about like the tactical stuff anymore, then what else can we do in terms of that experience, focusing again back to the human aspect, the experience of everyone who's touching the organization in some shape or form.
Wow.
That's powerful. This is such a great conversation. Now, and some people are going to challenge this, especially younger generation. They're very conscious of privacy, online privacy and data concerns, et cetera, and maybe AI even creating some bias. So Partha, kick us off there. Are there things that HR should be aware of as we look at AI and generative AI, particularly concerning, privacy bias issues?
Of course, I think AI, to function well, AI needs data and lots of data. Okay, so which means it's going to be in the corporate environment, it's going to be your data. Okay, what you are doing, what you are putting up there, it's your data. I think the transparency is the best way. You have to tell me that these are the informations which we'll be capturing. These things we will not be capturing, kind of thing. Be transparent about it. Okay, I don't see any other way out. I mean, I don't know if my emails, my Outlook emails are being read or not. Okay, no one has given out a policy saying that we don't read your mails. Who knows? They might be reading it. Okay, so I think the transparency has to be there on the privacy part of things. biasness, as Dave mentioned, it's all the historical data. So there was this case against Amazon on recruitment. They had to scrap their AI thing in 2018 or 19 because it was discriminating against women. Why? Because the historical data in the tech industry is very, very male dominated there. Okay, so they were discriminating on that. So they have to train this AI machines or whatever you call them, on diverse data sets there, bringing in the context a little bit. And this is not going to be done. You will not have the perfect product on the first go for sure. It has to be continuously audited, continuously monitored, and that's one new role for HR, by the way, or whoever. So it has to be continuously monitored, audited, and seen where it, how to actually contextualize it to that particular situation or particular company. And one more thing, I think one more challenge is the ethical issues which will come up. Okay, I don't think it is primarily an HR's role only. It is entire industry leaders' role to be thinking about the ethical issues. No one has an answer. There's lots of debates going on around that. Governments don't have a particular viewpoint on that right now. So I think we just have to be aware of what those ethical issues are, okay, and quickly incorporate those into the company policies there. So I think these three things are important for HR to look at.
Excellent. Shahana, Dave, what would you add?
I think absolutely agree with that. But I think the other aspects to think of is one, general like cybersecurity. I think that integrating that discipline into how we operate is important. Just handling data, and I think what we are also seeing is governments around the world, like we don't have regulation, proper like laws and regulations that can keep up with the change that is happening, right? So those are some of the things that need to be factored in, which we are seeing in different situations that are coming up of how can we establish proper governance around this so that again we are doing the right thing, and we are setting systems up to be sustainable and scalable, while protecting information as well, and privacy, of course. So it is about like how are we balancing that and factoring. I think the expectation will become more and more of how can we customize this based on what people are comfortable with. So customization will be an important aspect, but I'm curious to hear Dave's thoughts as well.
Yeah.
I'm going to take a step back. 3 comments really quick. First of all, and this isn't a comment, Parth and Shahana, thank you. Great insight. Number 1, well, let me anchor it. I was in a session with Chester a few months ago, and I often start a session with senior HR people. Write down, if you had a meeting with the board of directors or the senior executive team or investors, what's the message you'd want to share? So they write it down. We have to do a better job at training or onboarding, or one just came out, retention. 3 responses to that. Number 1, people and organization are more critical than ever. I think investors are paying attention. I think boards are paying attention. I think customers are paying attention. Government's paying attention in the US. I don't know yet as India about regulatory reporting. This stuff matters. Number 2, what is it they're paying attention to? I believe our field is moving. It's not, and I can't do this without hand gestures. My fingers represent talent. That's the people. My fist represents the organization. And the combination is leadership. We call that human. That's talent. Capability, that's organization with leadership. When you in HR go to a board meeting or any meeting with an investor, do we have the right talent? Do we have the right organization? And do we have the right leadership? It's no longer just talent. It's no longer just talent. It's the culture. It's the organization and the leadership. Number 1, people matter. This stuff, human capability matters. 2, this is what it means. 3, which is what we're getting into. How do you do it? When I sit with that board, am I providing them information that gives them confidence about the future? AI is a great tool. It's not the only tool, but it's a great tool. One of the things I think AI does is it allows us to scrape data in a unique way. We have relied on interviews. We've relied on observation, the plant tour. AI says, I can scrape any data anywhere. We just did that. We scraped the SEC reporting in the US. We scraped 7,000 companies, 21 and 22. We had a framework of human capability. We can now report every company's commitment to human capability based on what they disclosed. Whoa, here's where I see that. And part of the emails, I think we could scrape emails. We could scrape earnings reports. We could scrape training documents. When I go as an HR person to say, do we have the right people, organization, leadership, I not only do a survey of a few people, I not only build it on interviews, which are critical, but now I've got data from a lot of people and what they've actually presented. And AI gives us a tool to begin to use that in a very productive way. Final caveat, then I've talked too much. I wouldn't have said it, Sean, except you said it. I think the evolution of employee engagement, we started, I'm old enough, we talked about motivation, we talked about satisfaction, we talked about commitment, engagement, experience, well-being. I think where we're going in that stream of great ideas is personalization. AI allows me to personalize the employee experience. Sean, you use the word customization. We see customization with customer. You build at Citigroup, you build a custom portfolio for me based on my risk and factors. I think we're going to personalize the employee experience. And AI allows me to scale personalization. What works for you? And it's going to change. I'm different today than I was 10 years ago. Chester, I assume you and Adrian have different motivation than you did 20 years ago. You both look the same. You haven't aged. Oh, there you go. But I think we're going to see an increasing personalization of the employee experience and well-being. And AI allows us to do that in a very systematic way. I don't know yet how to do it well. Somebody said, how do I do that at Amazon with 300,000 people? I have no clue. That's why we have people like Partha who will create the program. But at least I think we're going to see that movement, which AI is a plus. How do we personalize your experience?
Yeah, how to use the tool, how do you move forward? It's all going to be, like you say, a learning experience. Well, let's take our own advice here, and let's start with you, Shahana. So, what is the future of HR? Where are you seeing AI having the biggest impact on how HR personalizes the experience, or creates higher engagement and creates better onboarding and experiences every day at work? Where do you see it going?
So I think again, from an HR function perspective, it is how are we getting a broader list of stakeholders into the conversation? I think we can scale that quite easily in terms like as we use technology, because again, the heavy lifting of the manual work, repetitive tasks, and really kind of getting insights from that is going to get easier. And then how do we contextualize it? So I'll give an example. So I don't know how many soccer fans we have here, but if anyone followed the World Cup, right? Like with Argentina and Messi's, everyone knew like that was his kind of final kind of to-do checklist on his list of accomplishments. And it with what this kind of a technology can do is the highlights and everything, it can kind of package it together so people are not spending time on that, but the discussion is focusing around the human element of Messi, where now he has done all of this. Now, what is he going to do next? Like what? So it is really, the conversation was a lot like centered around that, because people were kind of getting it very quickly, the highlights and the key moments throughout it's very easy. It's getting easier and easier to get that information, right? Summarized information. I think that's really where the biggest advantage that we are seeing right now. And now our kind of take is how do we contextualize it so that it's driving a much richer conversation across the board. And I think like that's where probably the sweet spot is right now.
Yeah, well, just to answer your question, the next thing for Messi is to score like 5 goals a game in the MLS, which he seems to be doing on a regular basis. I so appreciate that insight. And, Dave, as we're talking here, that's the future looking that you don't get from AI, right? Those are the questions we're asking, contextualizing it, putting it in a better perspective. What would you add to that conversation?
I would add, and I'm going to go back, when I meet with a board or a senior executive team, if I'm in HR, I don't start with HR. I start with what's the business trying to do to succeed in the marketplace.
Perfect.
For me, the key line is, if we don't succeed in the marketplace, there is no workplace. And
Right.
one of my pet peeves with HR people is we love to talk about HR. But if we don't succeed in the marketplace, there's no workplace. I did a talk for a company. It's been a while since I could probably talk. It was 100 senior people at Amazon Web Services. I was scared out of my mind. All PhDs. I bet at Shahana, you have some PhDs at Citigroup that are just, these are computer scientists, physicists, statisticians. What am I going to do? I studied English in college. I mean, I got a degree by reading books. So I thought, how do I get their attention? And I stood up and I said, what do these companies have in common? Digital equipment, obviously technology, they knew it. Enron, Compaq, Sears, Toys R Us. Somebody yelled out, they all went broke. And I yelled back, I consulted for one of them. Which I thought was a great line. I took digital from 120 to 10,000. You got 120. I'm going to get you to 20. Give me a year. And they said, either this guy's very confident or he's just a bozo. And I said, let me tell you the problem. They all focused inside. Those were all our case studies. People Express Airline, Kodak. They didn't focus on the marketplace. Toys R Us was phenomenal, and Amazon cleaned their clock.
Yep.
Sears was phenomenal. Our job, when I sit down with a business executive, start with the outside in. I was in a company yesterday. They were proud of all the things they were doing. And I quietly said to the senior leader in the group, I just looked at your price earnings ratio versus your three biggest competitors. You're lagging by 20%. Your $100 billion market value is 20 billion lower than it should be. It hasn't even come up. Well, we don't want to talk about that. What do you mean you don't want to talk about that? Investors want to talk about it. And I think if we can get HR to not focus on HR, our job is to help a customer have a better experience. Our job is to help an investor give us a premium. Our job is to build a reputation in the community so that we really do have that social citizenship part of our life. When we get HR people seeing that, I think our world begins to move to a much more powerful place. Anyway, and again, I'm on a soapbox. I'm sorry. That's a passion I've got. We call it outside in. And
actually, I completely agree with you, Dave, because
high five. We can do that. Even in India, we high-fived India. Let's high five.
Because that's like, I think that we, again, going back to my point about the clarity of our own identity, because we always tend to talk about it in our own context, like our own role, but how are we defining our identity in relation to others? And that's where it's kind of where the conversation needs to go, that you have to understand the broader dynamics at play. You have to understand the other players out there before you can really take an informed approach of what needs to happen internally for your own group.
I love it. And some of the others are not inside the firm. They're not the people
exactly.
It's an investor. And instead of getting mad at an investor, if our price earnings is 20% below an industry, don't get mad. Look into it. What can we say to them? We ought to have them reading books on anxiety and on gratitude and beginning to learn those internal factors that will give the investor confidence in our future. I talked to one head of HR, and we talk about this a lot. And her comment, and I obviously won't name this company, that's not what we're asked to do in HR. I don't meet with investors, and I'm going, sell short. I mean, that's the playground of the future. And AI doesn't yet give me an answer to that, if I can be so bold. I don't think AI does. I think there's so much variance and room for creativity in that space that I hope we'll see some great movement going forward.
Partha, I can see you're dying to jump in. So Partha, this is you.
Right. No, I think two important points both Sahana and Dave has touched upon. So to succeed in the market, right? I mean, we have to succeed in the market to survive. And I think the success in the market we have to be really creative, okay, in the rapidly changing thing. We don't know, we can't have a 5-year plans now. Okay, you can just have the next 1-year plan, and maybe if you're a Citigroup, maybe 2-year plan. Okay, so and where does this creativity come from? The people, right? So I think the focus on the people, the talent has to be immense, And now that HR has got all the free time because of AI, they can focus more on the strategic stuff there. The second one, on a lighter note, the scaling of personalization. I hope it doesn't become like the Facebook birthday wishes. Everyone now wishes me on my birthday on Facebook because it's there. I mean, there's no personalization to that. I mean, I know they're personalized, but the human touch is not there. Someone calls me up, wow, that's a different feeling there. So that human touch has still got to be there. No, that was on a lighter note on that.
Well, and I love that piece because I think AI does let us peek into people's lives. Partha, is that your office or is that a screen?
Yeah, that's my office. Yep.
Tell me one of those pictures that tells a story about you. You've got 4 beautiful pictures. And Adrian, tell me one of the books that tells me a story about you. I just think we get to peek in, and I'm really serious, Partha. What's behind you that tells me a story? This is a personalization. Any of those pictures?
No, I'll just give a quick answer to that so that you will not see that. There's a in the red picture, there's a small aeroplane. Okay, it's flying away into the destination somewhere. Okay, we don't know where it is. So, and it's ambitious kind of thing. So it is like, okay, it's a small plane flying off somewhere in the red sky. Something. I don't know what it means.
Could you move your head just a little? I want to see the picture.
and that guy actually, Partha, that guy actually got a visa to get out of it.
Look at what happened. We just learned something, Partha, about you.
Yes,
I would never have learned sitting in a hotel somewhere. That your ambition, your vision, a small plane, what a beautiful thing. Adrian, which of those books strikes you the most?
Well, you mentioned our book, Anxiety at Work. My son, who's a brilliant young man, helped Chester and I write that book. And he's had anxiety since he was, knee high to a grasshopper. And it was very cathartic for him. But he taught Chester and I tons writing that book together.
We have just scaled personalization. The 12 people that are on this call now know that's a joke. That's we're going to scale more than that.
There's 15, Dave. There's at least 15. Yeah.
Okay. But look at what we've just done. We've just personalized 2 people. And I'm waiting for Sahana to open up her screen so we can personalize her.
I just want to say, Dave, I'm a blank slate.
I was going to say, we've also learned that Chester has no life. But I think somehow technology enables us to connect with people in a different way. One of the things I love is looking at Sheikh Zayed. I love looking at cultures different from mine to begin to get a feel of who they are. And I think if we can use technology to connect us across borders, that's one thing I love about, I posted yesterday, Chester, thanks for mentioning it, on LinkedIn. I post a lot on LinkedIn and I make comments. I don't look at who's responding because I don't care who they are or where they're from. I look at the ideas. And after a while, I start saying, wow, that's a good idea. I heard something like that. 4 or 5 times somebody comments, and then lo and behold, it's a PhD. It's a young man, a young woman student in Pakistan. I don't care. I think the technology lets us scale that personalization in a wonderful way. And I didn't know that, Adrian. I hope your son's doing well with his work. He's got a good model.
Oh, bless your heart. That's great. Hey, I see where time is about done as it has flown by, as I knew it would. Let's just take a minute or 2 each. Let's go around. Let's just kind of have some last thoughts, especially for anybody in HR who may be a little apprehensive about jumping in with AI, or any last thoughts you want us to take away. Partha, why don't you kick us off, and we'll go to Shahana, and then Dave will have the last word here.
I think we have to look at AI in a positive way. I mean, we don't know exactly what's going to happen with that. So I think in a positive way, based on all our historical data, industrial revolution, all those things have happened, we have strived. Okay. And I think AI is not going to replace HR. Okay. It's AI trained HR who's going to replace HR. Okay. So I think that is very important. We have to be AI literate. I think that's my takeaway from the entire discussion.
Shahana?
Absolutely agree with that. I think that what we need to do in general, not just even if you're not in HR, I think it is important to understand any technological advances that are happening, that this is clearly, this has potential to change our lives, right? So then how do you get an understanding of it and get those implications? I think that it is really exciting. And again, history has taught us that it becomes very quickly integrated into our lives that we stop noticing it as something separate, right? So that's where, learning about it. And then from an HR function perspective, I think it's important to understand really the really exciting point that we are at, where we get to again get to redefine what our function means in general, because just the amount of capability that we are going to get once we leverage AI truly to its maximum potential, it can create a really quite a significant redefinition for our function. So I think in terms of that, HR is at an exciting point in time, and it's really being open about that. And this is yet another change that we are seeing in our lives right now.
Wonderful. Well said for both you and Partha. Dave, the father of modern HR.
Okay, I'm going to demonstrate my modernism. We have two folks on the call who have great insights. Chester, what's your headline? And Adrian, what's yours? And I'll share mine. You knew that was coming.
Yes, and I'm so glad you asked that. I've heard you speak many times, and like you said, we were together not too long ago, and it's never lost on me that you get to the point where you say, look, we've got a great culture. We're doing all this stuff for our people. And oh, by the way, we just declared Chapter 11. You don't have a great culture if the company's not doing well. So my big takeaway for HR professionals and the work that we're doing as we coach a lot of HR professionals is make sure that you're focused on the company doing well. And how do we get the right people? How do we get the right leaders? And do we have the right culture to support growth and doing well? You're absolutely right, Dave. Sometimes we get so internally focused. This is what HR does. That's the wrong approach. This is what we do to grow the company. That was my headline.
Yeah, one thing that jumped out to me, Dave, 20 years ago or so, before Chester and I began this work, I ran investor relations for a pretty big bank. And when I'd have, institutional investors come in, if they were pretty sharp, I would have them meet with the head of HR. Because they would realize the human aspect was what was driving the business, but also the business was driven by humans. And so I think you're exactly right, that if you in HR can put on that strategic hat and realize that we're driving the business as much as somebody in global wealth management or somebody running the customer service center, you're going to make a difference in your career and also for the organization.
My takeaways, ABC. A, amen, 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 and amen to the four of you. Phenomenal. B, Adrian, I hope your son's well. I don't know why I'm getting emotional about that. We are in HR. We do care about people. We care about people more than profit. And people drive profit. So that's B. C, I love to ask people the question, what's the best year of your life? Your son says the year I left home. But the year I went to college, the year I got married, the year I had a child. One of my friends lately said, the year my divorce went through. I think they're all wrong. I think, in my last takeaway, the best year of your life is the next 12 months.
Right.
And may it always be so. May it always be so. And that's where AI, I don't know what it means yet, but the next 12 months are going to discover some stuff that is just so exciting. And I hope the next 12 months for all of us is the best 12 months of our life. That's my ending comment.
Amen, amen, amen. Hey, what a delight to have, so many fun, interesting, and clever and smart people all in one place. Partha, thank you so much for sponsoring, Vantage Circle, your wonderful company, this webinar. I hope those of you that are listening in that you took as many notes as I did. There are so many great takeaways. Shahana, thank you so much.
I have 2 pages.
Me too.
Yeah. And Dave, always you bring the joy and the excitement and the optimism about the next 12 months. And again, Partha, thank you so much for being here. To all of you that tuned in, this is recorded. You can go back and view it again and again and again, and we hope you will. Our time is up. Adrian, as always, I let you have the last word.
Well, Shahana, Partha, David, thank you so much for joining us. And thank you, everybody, for joining in today. And until next time, we wish you the best and the best of luck in running an amazing HR organization wherever you are. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks.